Hey, this is Alex from Los Angeles.
Hi, this is Karan from San Francisco. Welcome to Movies That Shaped Us, a journey of self-discovery through a shared love of film. We're two longtime friends who grew up on opposite ends of the globe with very different backgrounds, but were both shaped and are still being shaped by the movies we see and love. In each episode, we'll cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through three of our favorite movies. We hope these movies and topics are fun and revelatory to you, just like they've been to us. So with that, Alex, what's our topic for today?
So, our topic for today is, I guess, both an event and a moment in a way. It's our experiences of leaving home. So, this is something most people, I guess, might do at some point in their lives, where you are going off outside of where you grew up, outside of your parents, going off on your own to somewhere new geographically. For me, just reminding the listeners, I grew up in Boston and went to high school there, but then went to college out in California in Los Angeles. So my big leaving home moment in my life was, typical in the United States, where you go off to college. So I not only left home and I didn't live with my parents anymore, but I also went off to a new city and experienced what that was like as well. So that is the big event for me. That definitely there are some movies that help shape that, reminding me of that time, all the things I was going through, and the challenges, but then also the excitement of leaving home and going off on your own. What about yourself, Karan?
Yeah, so for me, I grew up as an army brat in India. So every few months, or sorry, few years, that would be terrible. Every few years, we moved to a different place, which was great. I mean, it's the only life I knew. So,
Uh-huh.
very happy about that. But then I think the big markers of actually leaving home were to go to undergrad in a different city in India, and then for grad school, leaving India to come to the US. So I feel like those are the two big markers of sort of leaving home.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm excited to get into the movies and what these milestones, events, moments have really meant for us.
Yeah, no, it's a big a life event. It was fun kind of going back and seeing some of these films, and the films that you also are going to talk about today was really fun for me too, to kind of put myself in your shoes a little bit in terms of what some of those moves must have been like for you. So yeah, with that, why don't we get started on your list, and what's your number three?
All right. So my number three is a movie, an Indian movie actually called Wake Up Sid from 2009. Quick log line on this movie: the story of a lazy Mumbai college student who does absolutely nothing. With a turn of events, will Sid realize his potential in this world and become a success in the fast-paced life of Mumbai? Starring Ranbir Kapoor, Kankana Sen, Supriya Pathak, a bunch of other people. So I picked this movie. I think we've talked about this a lot on our
Hmm.
podcast, that so much of the way movies land on us comes to when you watch them.
Right.
So I watched this movie 2009, which is sort of, in my early years of moving to the US for grad school. So I'm definitely way older than the protagonist. But I think what really rung true with me about this movie, at least with my own experience, was about someone who is just not ready to leave home, even though somewhere deep down they know that this is coming and it's
Hmm.
something that they need slash desire or even want,
Hmm.
but they're just not ready for it. And I don't fully relate to that aspect of not being ready for it. And as I'll explore that more and more as we go through, all our movies or all of my movies. But
Uh-huh.
but there are definitely aspects of just not being ready. And I think this was really personified at both of my two big milestones of leaving home. Number one, when I left for grad school, I'd lived with my parents until that point.
Hmm.
Was very used to being taken care of and even pampered. I come from a very loving family where my parents in many ways were also my friends, and I had friends outside of them, but we are very much part of sort of our own little bubbles. So
Right.
leaving home to then go to undergrad, meeting all these new people, making new friends, but also just the administrative stuff of life, of how do you do simple things like getting a driver's license, to
Hmm.
where do you get groceries from, how do you cook, how do you open a bank account, all the stuff around sort of growing up. I feel like I was very naive and unfamiliar. I always kind of envied kids around me who just seemed smarter, on the street,
Oh, I see.
like
I
the
see. They
street
knew how to
smart
do.
way.
They knew how to cook
Yeah.
an egg or something. Yeah.
Yeah, or sort of get around life versus I spend more of my time like watching movies and thinking about life and sort of bigger questions and relationships. I wasn't very good with money management or kind of the wherewithal of life, and I feel like this movie really captures that when the main character sort of ends up leaving home, not for reasons that I left home, because there's a lot of other stuff happening in the movie, but
Right.
when this the main character is living with this girl in this apartment, and how messy he is. He has no
Oh yeah.
idea what the structure of the day even means because he's had, help at home taking care of him, waking him up,
Hmm.
getting breakfast ready for him. His mom is kind of, coddling him as if he was six,
Right. Right.
So I didn't have, a shock of to that degree, but I definitely relate to my own incapacities of sort of being frazzled by,
Yeah.
figuring out how to be alone and the admin stuff is one side, but also emotionally, because I was so dependent, if you will, hopefully in a positive way on just sort of, being with my family, that sort of being rooted out of that and
Hmm.
plucked and planted somewhere else was very hard, for sure. So I think I relate with that, and I with this movie. And then what this movie does a great job in, of is juxtaposing this character's journey of sort of fumbling and figuring out how to be yourself and how to grow up with the lead woman character who's already gone through those trials and tribulations and is,
Right.
years ahead of him in terms of actually wanting to be in a new city,
Hmm.
exploring life, being on her own, having her own independence and freedom. So I just love that juxtaposition and how, ultimately the movie is about discovering your own passions, discovering who you are. It's about the changing nature of friendships and relationships, even with your parents as you leave home. The people who've been a part of your life up to that point, they may or may not be, or if they still are part of your life, it might be in a different way. And we see that with this character and his
Hmm.
friends, especially one of his guy friends. They sort of hung out and been with each other, but a lot happens when you leave home and suddenly you want different things from the people who've been in your life, and sometimes you get them and sometimes you don't, and that changes how you view them. So I think it captures so much of that. I just think the movie, even though it's a Bollywood film, it's it's heightened in many ways and maybe even cheesy in many ways and corny, but there is something real, and I think part of it has to do with the performances. We talk a lot about getting transported. I've never been to Mumbai other than like maybe one evening as part
Oh,
of a
okay.
layover, even
Uh-huh.
though I grew up in India and such. But I feel like I got a good taste of what life looks like in Mumbai,
Hmm.
of sort of, whether it's being out and sort of driving around and taking local transportation to the club scene and, these different stratas of society. If you have a little bit more money versus not, where do you live? I don't know any of those places, but I think the movie really does a good job in transporting you and putting you in the shoes of the characters. So yeah, whenever I think of leaving home, I always think of this character and how inept he was, and there's something, I don't know, now heartwarming and funny about it, but at
Yeah.
the time it wasn't. So yeah, that's my number three. Wake up, Sid.
Yeah, and just to clarify then for listeners who have seen this film, or if you go off and watch this film later, you relate to this character more of his emotional journey, or did you actually not know how to fold your clothes when you lived alone? I just want to make sure that's clear. Or could you cook an egg? Did you know how to cook an egg? Or if not, that's fine. I'm not no judgment.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't know how to cook an egg, which is so crazy because the people who know me now, I am
Oh
this
yeah.
sort of foodie person,
Yeah. You're a
who's
great cook.
and
I've had
even
meals that you've cooked and it's been fantastic.
yeah,
I never would have guessed that you didn't like grow up having, known how to cook an egg.
nothing. I couldn't even make coffee. Like I had like this. I don't know if this was there in the US, but a lot of kids in living in dorms and such had these like little heating emulsion rods that you basically put
Ah.
in a cup to heat water to
Oh
make
yeah.
tea or coffee.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the number of rods I burnt or number of like glasses or cups I completely ruined because I couldn't even do that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
completely inept.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Okay. Yeah. So I had never seen this film before or heard of it.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed watching it. I thought it was really fun. I think all of the things you mentioned too about leaving home, I related a little more to Aisha, the female character, in terms of getting your own
Hmm.
apartment, painting like getting an apartment that kind of sucks. Like my first apartment that I moved into with some friends after freshman year of college, we had to paint the whole thing, kind of make it look nice because it was kind of a
The
dump.
fun montage in the movie too.
Yeah, yeah, like that. I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
remember doing this. And it's like, oh, wow. Yeah, it's like now you're off on your own. And, you do have to rely on folding your own clothes, doing your own laundry, cooking your own food, which are things that I had done a little bit of, before leaving home. So I didn't necessarily feel that I, didn't necessarily know how to do it, but I didn't have to do it. But then you're in this
Yeah.
situation now where you do now have to do it. So I definitely related a lot with her and that need that she had too. I think of, they didn't get into her background too much, but it seemed like she wanted to leave. I'm trying to remember where she grew up.
Calcutta.
Calcutta, right? She left Calcutta, and I think just because she wanted to go off and
Hmm.
pursue this career that she, I guess, felt she couldn't, be a writer in Calcutta, or just wanted to experience life in a new way. And those are a lot of things that I related to too about my leaving where I grew up to then go off to college. It was a lot of those similar things. So yeah, I thought this movie was really fun, and had that great juxtaposition between someone who was just, yeah, like so lazy, but endearing, not in a way that was like annoying. It's like, oh, I get where this guy's coming
Yeah.
from, because there is that point in your life too where you're just like, I don't really know what to do. He's given a job. It's like, oh, go work for your dad. It's like, I don't really want to do that. So then that's why he's not trying. It's not that he's a
Yeah.
slob or someone who isn't smart. He just isn't
Yeah.
passionate about anything because it had to be, right? Everything was handed to him up to that point.
Exactly.
And then when he finds his passion in photography, like that's when he like then becomes the adult, and self-sufficient because he has something to strive for. And that's what I liked about this film too. You got to see his journey of like,
Yeah.
well, it wasn't that he was a bad person. It's just
No.
that he had nothing to try. Like, why would he try? Why would he leave
Why
home?
would you try?
Why would he try? He just doesn't care. He doesn't want to work for his dad's shower company. Um,
No.
so yeah, I thought it was fun. And then it's obviously there's a romance there too, where spoilers, like they get together in the end. The one thing that I thought was
Yeah.
a little odd, and I just wanted to ask you about, like, is this a norm in these films? Is there's a big scene at the end where it's a will they won't they kind of relationship, and then he kind of runs to her. I think it's even in the rain, classic kind of
Hmm.
situation. And then they basically both profess their love for one another, and then they hug.
Yeah.
There's no kiss. Is that like, I thought that was like, kiss her, dude. Come on.
I
Is that
know.
a normal thing in just these films to not have a kiss? Is like too much?
Yeah, especially back then. I mean, I honestly have not kept up with Bollywood films since this time. This might be one of the last Bollywood movies that I remember watching and poring over and thinking about. And ever since, when I am in India, I'll probably watch whatever is sort of, the big blockbuster or what have you. But yeah, at that time, this was not the case. Like you wouldn't
Oh,
see the leads kissing, which I do think has changed quite a bit now. So
okay.
if this
Okay.
movie were made now, you would see it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That was surprised. And then I was like, oh,
Yeah.
well, it's probably like, so, again, like a cultural thing in this film that it wasn't,
Yeah.
something they did at the time. But that was like, oh, well, it's like, I
Yeah.
wanted this big, like Hollywood, quote unquote, Hollywood ending. And that involves
Yeah.
like at least a kiss. And they just hugged each other. Like, and then he stopped hugging her and then looked at her again and then hugged again. I was like, oh, okay. So this must be something that they were. So I just wanted
Yeah.
to verify
Yeah.
that.
The
But no,
hug is the kiss,
is the
essentially.
kiss. Okay.
Especially the second hug is
Right.
what really
Okay.
says it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, no, it was fun. And for listeners, this movie's on Netflix, so it's at least right now. I mean, as of this recording, it's available to stream. It's a fun sort of like coming of age romantic film that I definitely recommend checking out.
I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, the thing that sort of another cultural thing which I was hoping that you might pick up on as well, because it stood out to me, which is that he just moves back with his parents. Like that's sort of also part of the arc
Mm,
that, oh, now that I found myself, my passion,
hmm
and I've also confessed my love and I have somebody, but guess what? I'm going to move back home. Because it's what happens in India. If you are an unmarried, 20 something, you live with your parents until you're married. Unless a different situation arises where you're living with other roommates, for example, and people do that, they'll rent out a flat, but he doesn't seem to have that situation with his friends either. So
Right, right.
I thought that was sort of interesting and kind of cultural, because if this movie were made here, the arc would not be, oh, he's moving back home. The arc
No.
would be, okay, he moves out completely for real. Doesn't need some, mango supplies from his mother, or, a little change here, a little change there. Like, he can just live on his own, whether with the girlfriend or not,
Right,
different
right.
thing. So I thought that was interesting. And I wondered if this movie was made in India even now, would that change? Will they, because the society has changed and progressed in so many different ways, and since the time this movie was made. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, totally. Actually, to be honest, that would have seemed something that I would have wanted brought up, but I can't remember which episode it was we just recently recorded where you did say that it's normal to have.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew that going in. So I've been educated by you already, not to be like, oh, okay, this makes sense. But you're right. If this movie was remade in the States, there would definitely be a roommate character that this guy would have, who would probably be even like more of a slob, or maybe he'd be like the neat freak that would always like be prodding him too, along with the girl. But I think that the prodding that he got from his parents, I think, and especially the mom character, would probably have been done through a best friend, and not so if this was done in America. So yeah, that was definitely something I picked up on too, but you already had educated me enough. So I kind of was like, okay, this makes sense. Of course he's going to move back home. He's not getting married yet, but the kiss was a new thing. So now I'll know the next time you have a Bollywood movie I won't expect any kissing and be disappointed in the lack of some kissing. So
yeah. I do love how their romance also develops, how she sort of sees him as a boy, which he is, and is actually, has eyes for other people who are more worldly, more cultured, and then realizes through that actually that's not what I really want. The things I really care about are different. Somebody who's passionate and actually tries and works and is committed, and those qualities. So it's not, I wouldn't call this like a rom-com in the traditional way. Like, the romance part is not the focus of the movie, but I thought that detail is very interesting and quite relatable. Like how, you imagine things about people that you want to be with, but that often is not the case.
Oh, totally. And in a way too, I feel that, she gets this internship in a magazine, but she wants to be a writer. And I at least read this as like his kind of like YOLO attitude of like, who cares, just kind of do it, inspired her to just to write and push an article on her boss, who's like the editor. I think she's an assistant. She's like, hey, I wrote this. Like, so in a way I feel like his laziness, or not laziness, but his aimlessness and devil may care attitude, nonchalantness, I think inspired her to take a chance on something she might have been too afraid to do because of afraid of failure. And clearly, like, Sid didn't care about failing because all he was doing was failing. It wasn't bothering him. So exactly. I think they worked well off one another as well in the film, which, again, found very, very enjoyable.
That's great. All right. What's your number 3?
So my number 3 film is American Graffiti, film from 1973, written and directed by George Lucas, starring Ron Howard, Richard Dreyfuss, Cindy Williams, and also a cameo from Suzanne Summers, and one of Harrison Ford's first screen roles. So the IMDb plot summary of this film is: a group of teenagers in California's Central Valley spend one final night together after their 1962 high school graduation, cruising the strip with their buddies before they pursue their varying goals. So this film, I think, captures a lot of the indecision and the thought process that goes into, do you leave home or not? Which is something that, I definitely, as someone who, yes, I was going to leave home to go off to school and college, but I didn't have to go to California. And there's a lot of back and forth that I went through. And I think what this film does is really through the two main characters, Ron Howard's character and Richard Dreyfuss' character, who both kind of go back and forth. Do they want to leave their small town or not? I think captures a lot of those mixed emotions about leaving home for me. And I think this also really is about like that post high school feeling of, okay, am I doing this? What's it going to be like? And that thought process of what it is going to be like leaving home. And you start to imagine those things. And then sometimes, you question it. So like the plot summary said, the movie's about the night after graduation, the night before these two characters are going to leave. And Richard Dreyfuss' character has a scholarship. He's sort of on a good track to go off to this good school. Ron Howard just kind of wants to get the hell out of town. He's sort of, oh, I've not this small town. There's nothing here for me. But Dreyfuss is thinking, maybe I don't want to go. Maybe I want to stay. And this whole night, the film takes place over one night. These two characters go through a kind of a roller coaster of do I or don't I? Richard Dreyfuss, again, is very unsure. It's kind of easy to stay. Like, I think he's afraid to go off and do something different. He's used to this town. He's used to all the people in it. He doesn't want to start his adulthood, which is going off and making big decisions. This is sort of the first big decision you make is, do I, leave my town or not? Ron Howard, again, is someone who wants to get the hell out. Oh, he says some line about like, oh, whatever I want in life, it's not in this town. And he's trying to kind of break up with his girlfriend too, to be like, oh, let's kind of be open relationship where I'm off at college, because I think his girlfriend is a year or two younger than him, so she's not yet leaving. And it's just, they go on this little nostalgia trip of go back to the old high school, walk the halls, go to a high school dance. You're sort of really feeling like you're already gone when going back and having these feelings, which is something I feel too. Senior year of high school, you're kind of walking around the school being like, yeah, I'm already outgrown this. But do I actually want to go off and leave this city and this place? That indecision. I think what the film does really well is there's with Richard Dreyfuss' character, who again is very reluctant to go. He sees this girl, like I said earlier, Suzanne Summers, in this like white T-Bird, because this is the 60s. So they do this thing where they just kind of like drive around essentially like aimlessly in the neighborhood on these main streets. And it's just what they did back then, I guess. I did not grow up at that time, but he sees her in this T-Bird and like he's immediately like enamored. Who is this girl? I've never seen her before. This is what I want. And he can't quite find her, can't quite catch up to her in this town, which is kind of signifying to me of like, whatever he wants is not, he will not find it where he is. And I think that's one of the lessons that he learns. Even he doesn't really know what it is that he wants. And then he sees this girl, he's like, that's what I want, but he can't get her in this town. And then there's this amazing shot at the end of the film, because he does actually decide at the end of the night to leave, where he's on the plane and he's flying away, and he looks down and he sees that T-Bird, and that T-Bird, which represents sort of his, what he wants out of his life, is going in the same direction as him. Driving out of the town. And I think that really signifies to me that, okay, yeah, he did make the right decision. He should have left this town. And then, the flip side of it, Ron Howard just ends up staying and realizing he does love, his girlfriend enough where he doesn't want to go. And, maybe that bravado and bluster of, this town's too small, I want to leave it, was sort of hiding this feeling of his, of like, he can't actually let go of these things that he maybe thought he could. Which again are two emotions that I for sure felt when deciding to go off to California, a place I visited one time. I knew zero people who were going to the same college as me. Actually, no one from my school went to California at all for college. And there's a lot of great schools in Boston. I got into several of them. My parents definitely would have preferred that I stayed in the hometown. It just would have been a different experience. I would have gotten that moving out of my house, but not leaving my entire world behind, which is something that Dreyfuss decides to do in this film. And so I think Lucas does a fantastic job of really dealing with these kind of two sides of leaving home. And the movie's just, I think, fantastic. Really, great characters, really well shot. I mean, the way he shoots these cars, I mean, you feel like you're there, transported back to 1962 on the streets with these kids. The music's fantastic. It sometimes acts as kind of a Greek chorus. There's radio playing of different songs from that time that are kind of commenting at best on what's going on with the characters. It's just all around a fantastic film, but to me, I think really represents that indecision, which is something at least I felt of, should I really be doing this? But then, you know what, I know, kind of like Dreyfuss, that I can't get what I want in my town. So yeah, a movie I still think really holds up, especially the performances from the cast all around is just fantastic. That's my number 3.
All right. I think you said it all, really. The indecision stuff is like spot on, and I didn't feel so much of that in my life when I was leaving for undergrad, but I think leaving India to come to the US for business school was a big one,
Right.
like, the opportunity ahead of you. You sort of even imagine that life a little bit, but at the same time, it's such a big leap of what your life is going to be. And are you going to make it? Is it going to be worth it? How are you going to start up all over again? What happens if it doesn't work out? Can you even come back? How do you come back? A million questions, right?
Hmm.
So I think that part really resonated. In a way, I feel like the stakes of that in my own life are even stronger in
Sure.
some
Yeah.
ways, right? But I thought the movie does a great job in capturing that. For as the movie as a whole, I feel like I need to give this movie another watch because I hadn't seen this movie before. I'd seen like
Mm.
scenes here and there.
Hmm.
I don't know. To me, there's something about the way the movie is shot. Felt like, yeah, this is a modern movie made now about a time in the past.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I found that very distracting.
Mm.
I mean, the 50s and 60s, like, it's one of my favorite periods of film in a way. Like, I love when, modern movies go back. Like, we've talked about Todd Haynes films, who's such a,
Hmm.
master craftsman. So I'm sort of used to that level of detail and that level of sort of transportism, if that's the word. I didn't feel that in this movie. It felt like a modern movie shot, about the time in the past. And maybe there's something about the camera angles or the lack of graininess of the film, or because there's so much about just driving around. So you also always have like lights blaring, right? The lights from
Yeah.
the diner, the lights from the car, that maybe that's what does it. But there's something about, and that's why I need to watch this movie again to either change my opinion or maybe understand where that feeling came from. So I don't know. I found it hard to kind of get into it. And I was like, just make this movie now. Why are we in the 60s? So I don't know.
That's interesting. I mean, I think something that this movie, I feel, invented nostalgia as a concept and definitely as a genre in film.
Mm,
Like no one had done this before, which is let's tell a story, but
interesting.
through a nostalgic lens. Like he was, because that's
Mm,
where Lucas grew up in a small town in Northern California that he was huge into cars. This was a world that he was trying to capture. And normally what had been done in, films before this time, released not in with such a commercial hit like this, is they would try to do like what Tom Haynes was trying to do, is like capture a time, but not like a feeling of what it was like to live in that time. He was trying to recreate, and a lot of movies do this too. They try to recreate the era where you feel like you're transported back. I think what Lucas was doing, and I think he does it successfully too, is capture what is the feeling of a nostalgia for a time that you no longer live in. And it's odd. Like I
mm,
watched this movie and I feel nostalgic for 1962 Northern California, even though I didn't even grow up there. Like these feelings that
mm,
I start having the nostalgia from my own past because he's able to capture his feelings of nostalgia. So it's not meant to, I think, be authentic to the time, but it's authentic to a
mm,
feeling about the time of like, oh, remember
mm,
when we were in high school, remember when I was going through these experiences. And I think that's why too the
mm,
film works. When I didn't grow up at this time, but I watch it and I'm transported back to my time in high school because it
right.
captures that feeling, which is something that I think this movie again kind of invented that genre, which then kind of exploded throughout the 70s with Happy Days and Grease, looking nostalgically back into the 50s. They weren't trying to capture any kind of reality. But they were trying to capture a feeling of something. So I think I interpret your comments to that. It's like you're maybe seeing that the nostalgic distance he's putting through it, and not the fact that it's not meant to be an authentic,
Yeah.
down to the details representation of what it was like to actually be in that time, but it captures the feeling of kind of what it was like,
Right.
which is
That's
why to me the
interesting.
movie
And
works because of that.
that's clarifying, actually. And that does make sense. And yeah, which is why I think I need to watch it again. To me, I need a little bit more of that detail to feel the nostalgia for real. That's just maybe
Sure.
just how my brain works. Like, when I'm transported, then I can suspend where we are at
Mm-hmm.
and get transported back to my own place. Is just how my brain works. So, but I don't know, maybe on a second viewing I'll have a different experience. That said, it was still really fun to watch this movie, and it was always on my long list of films to watch because I love movies about nostalgia and sort of looking
Yeah.
back. But somehow I don't know why I'd avoided this movie for so long,
Hmm.
but I was happy to check it out.
Cool. So yeah, Karan, what is your number two?
All right, so my number two is Ladybird from 2017. Quick log line on this. In 2002, an artistically inclined 17-year-old girl comes of age in Sacramento, California. Directed by Greta Gerwig, starring Saoirse Ronan, Laurie Metcalf, Tracy Letts, Beanie Feldstein, Lucas Hedges, Timothy Chalamet. Quite the cast. Um, so I put this movie on my list because this movie is about many things. First and foremost, it's a mother-daughter story.
Hmm.
It's a coming-of-age story just of this girl. It's also a movie about friendship and all of that. But I think this movie is also about leaving home, and in a very specific way. The way I connect with this movie is when you've been living in a place and you started to outgrow it, and you've been imagining what your life might look like if you weren't here. You don't know exactly what you want from life. You don't know
Right.
exactly where you want to be, but you know you don't want this.
Hmm.
And in some ways, you're even maybe falling out of love with the place that you're in, only to find out how deeply you're connected with that place, and how it's in your bones. And in some ways, I forget the line in the movie, focusing and thinking so much about something is also love. Love doesn't always have to take the shape and form of just being, adoring something and being positive about it all the
Hmm.
time. Like love is also about just being focused and attentive to something. And I really connect with that whole aspect amongst many other things in this movie. Growing up in India, especially this is before I left for business school to the US. I remember like driving around in India, being stuck in traffic, the heat, all this, silliness that comes with a place which just has a lot happening all the time. Where I remember feeling this, that, yeah, I love my parents, I love my family, and that'll be really, really hard to leave behind. At the same time,
Hmm.
I don't think I belong here anymore. Like, I don't think I have the kind of people who speak my language anymore. I want more from life. I want people who are passionate about something the way I am. I want to have interesting intellectual conversations, which sounds very naive at this point, but that's who I was. And I sort
Right.
of felt that everybody around me sort of feels sort of silly.
Hmm.
I want more. I want depth in my life. Because I always sort of was, on that mindset, even as a kid. I think I've shared this on the podcast before, that I would park the kids of people who would visit our home in my room and give them toys, then come back to the living room and hang out with their parents. This is how I was as a
Nice.
6-year-old, 7-year-old,
Yeah. Yeah.
always a weird child in many ways. And I was like, yeah, you can run around the house or in the garden. It's fine, great. You do your thing. I don't really do that. So when somebody grows up with that, at some point you start to kind of cap out. So I think Ladybird in this movie is one of those people who is insufferable and often also very annoying. But I think she has been living this literal alter ego of a different person, who has dreams and visions and sees herself as this sort of creative person, and almost feels that Sacramento is too small to give
Hmm.
her that, and looks down upon a lot of things, and the relationship with her mother, where they live, and what have you, and is kind of precocious in that sense. At the same time, I think through the course of the movie, she also realizes how much she loves all of it. And I feel the same way. When I go back to India now, not as often as when I lived there, but I know what's going to be at the end of every turn.
Right.
I know where that tree is going to be. I know what street cart is going to show up and what that smells like, because it's in your blood, it's in your bones, and that is love too. Even though you hate the muck and the traffic that comes along with on that turn.
Right.
So
Right.
I just think this movie is a masterpiece. And I've talked about this before, that I feel so lucky, just the way the people who are growing up in the 70s, and they saw Scorsese and all these greats come to life, Woody Allen or what have you. I feel like Chazelle, Barry Jenkins, Jordan Peele, like this was the new class that sort of came up in this year. Like all these movies, Get Out, Lady Bird, they're all Best Picture nominees
Mm-hmm.
literally the same year. And then Moonlight, La La Land the year before. So I feel really lucky to be a part of this age where new filmmakers, especially in a time where original storytelling is so difficult, we
Oh
are
yeah.
literally crowded with either franchise shit or remakes, you know? So to have this singular voice be put up on screen with such great detail, every character is human and real. You're transported back, you know, to not back to Sacramento in like such a unique, real way. It's a small, simple movie, but deceptively so. It is
Mm-hmm.
beautifully shot. It is cinematic. The way the music is used, you know, uh, all of it. Like this is one of my favorite movies. I revisited and learned something new every single time I watch it. But and then last thing I say, just Saoirse Ronan, who might come up again on one of our lists, who just I just think is one of the best actresses working. And again, what a career arc. Not many child stars, you know, transfer to being adult stars. And I don't mean adult stars in that way, but grown up stars
Right, right.
and have a flourishing, thriving career. So and to transform into this character as Ladybird, I mean, she's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, at the core of this, I think this movie to me is about that tension that you feel that I don't really belong here, but guess what? You actually do. You always will, no
Right.
matter where you go. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I really connect with that feeling. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
that's Lady Bird.
yeah, I think the ending of the film, like the last like 2 or 3 minutes, really like nails that
Yeah.
theme, and that she goes off to college outside of Sacramento and meets the same sort of like insufferable loser guys who she left in
Hmm.
Sacramento. And she feels lost in New York and goes to a church just to feel like home, and then calls home and apologizes
Hmm.
to her mom. I think that is really that realization that, well, actually, maybe the grass wasn't greener, or this is an important part of who I am. And I can't
Yeah.
just like, even if I don't like it, it's still something that is comforting to me. And yeah, so I think that definitely the last 5 minutes totally nails that theme.
But along the movie too, right? Because when you're so incessantly focused, I mean, and that to me is the biggest part of the movie is that
Mhm.
love is not just about loving something, like giving
Right.
something attention and care is also love. And this whole place, all these people are part of her, you know?
Hmm.
So you see that love as a spectator. I don't think she knows it, but we know it that this person is from Sacramento and actually loves this place, even though she may not see it that way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can't remember the line in the film either, too. But like, if she's thinking about something all the time,
Yeah,
there's
that's
got to be
love.
something there. You're right, exactly. It's like, oh, if you're even if you're annoyed by it, but you can't stop thinking about it. Okay, well, that definitely is some sort of part of you that then you can't easily let go. And if you didn't love it, then you never even think about it. She'd be
Yeah,
gone, and like Sacramento would just be a distant memory to her. Have you ever been to Sacramento, by the way?
just driven past it,
Yeah,
or and maybe grabbed a coffee or something. But I do remember the bridge and such. Like, yeah, but I
yeah.
haven't spent meaningful time.
I spent like an afternoon there once. I just want to, because this movie shits on Sacramento a lot, especially in the beginning. I actually can find it kind of charming.
Yeah,
And I think it's less about being anti-Sacramento, more like just being anti your hometown. But
yeah,
yeah, I think you're right. This movie, there's a lot of things going on, but like to me, like those last 5 minutes really nail that feeling of, oh yeah, actually, this I was trying to run away from something that is just a part of me, whether I kind of like it or not, and trying to feel that you'll find something better with being away from your home. Maybe that's not the case. Like maybe she is just meant to be living in Sacramento. I mean, we don't really know what happens to the character. Like, does she go back? Does she eventually get over homesickness and learn to love New York and function well there? But I don't know. Like it's I think it could definitely go either way. So just on the film, this is the second time I've seen the movie. I did not see it in theaters. Actually, the first time I watched it was because you were recommending it to me after the whole
hmm,
Oscars thing. So I've never been a much of a Greta Gerwig fan, or that whole scene that she kind of comes from. Even a lot of the directors you mentioned that are, you're really into that scene. That's not really, those don't do it for me. But I found the film to be
hmm.
enjoyable the first time I saw it. It definitely like especially the performances of both her and her mom. I think just are fantastic performances.
Mhm.
I think elevate the rest of the film for sure. And like to me, like on the second viewing, is sort of the things that bothered me the first time I saw it were more like magnified, and I think it just gets back to the writing. Like she seems too insufferable to me throughout the Ladybird character throughout most of the film. It's like, she's basically like the rebel holding Caulfield, kind of like, oh, this all sucks, like everything's bad. But because the Sacramento doesn't look that bad, it's like it's all on you. Like if you're trying to make the world seem bad, and then she's kind of rebelling against that, sort of what Catcher in the Rye, or even like the film.
But that's the point.
I know that is eventually the point, but it's like getting to there. It's like I just found her character so much more insufferable this time, and just kind of mean to like her parents, and the mom was kind of mean, and I don't know. That was I think it's elevated a little more. But you're right, that is definitely the point. I mean, she couldn't have gotten to the place she got to because the message is Sacramento is actually not that bad. But I guess just dealing with her brattiness through like 9% of the film was really kind of grating on me a little bit. But that being said, it is successful in terms of what Greta's trying to get at. I do think the last couple scenes where this character is really growing up after having left her town, her hometown, I think are definitely resonate for sure. Like the movie ends on a strong note, just like getting there for me, which is sort of like, oh man. And like, again, some of those young actors, like the guys too. I mean, I know it's like they're playing characters that are insufferably annoying. But I find those actors, Lucas Hedges and Chalamet, like very annoying personally. And they're playing very annoying characters, especially Chalamet has that line of like, I'm trying to live without the need for money. And it's like, look, there are people like that. And I think that is true. Yeah. There are definitely kids, especially around that age, like boys who are like 16 to 20, like they think they're so cool because they're just sort of like against stuff. But so he captures that very well, but it's still like, you were so insufferably annoyed. But look, I was that guy too. And maybe that's why I was so annoyed by it. Like I was probably just as annoying as he was at that age. And like sort of the same kind of like annoying college boys too that she met. But yeah, I mean, definitely, I think the ending of this movie perfectly captures that. I don't know, it's like regret about leaving home, but how that can really show you what was who a part of that your home and where you grew up is really just a part of you, even if you're trying to leave it.
Absolutely. Well, to put it back in the messaging of the movie, I think you love this movie, even if it made you angry and made you sort of feel frustrated with the insufferable characters. So.
I mean, maybe. I mean, I did forget about it. It wasn't like some of the other films that we watched or that I've watched for this podcast where like for weeks I was in physical pain after watching it. So it didn't leave that much of an impression on me. But, yeah. But yes, that is a theme of the film for sure.
Yeah. I think part of it also is to kind of sum up on this one is the place you grew up in is always part of you. And I don't know if it's an either or, as somebody who has been living in a different country altogether and has, gone back and forth of sort of for a while, purposefully disconnecting from all things that reminded me of home as all honestly part of self-protection, that I was like, oh, if I watch too many Indian movies, or listen to too many Indian songs, I don't think I'll be able to survive here. But then also thinking that, well, isn't that the point? Like I want to be engaging in what this place has to offer. So right. I need to sort of start afresh and what have you. But then over time, falling back into what I loved growing up and that world, and then another phase 3 where the two kind of coexist, where you can see the blending of these two worlds in your mind, and you suddenly don't have to pick one over the other. You can use one to accentuate or enhance the other. So it's sort of this constant journey, I feel like, of us as of humans who've been moving around our whole lives, in some form or the other. And which is why I think the older I get, not just, get too philosophical, the more I strongly believe in, you can have opinions, but life is just all gray. Right. There's no black or white at all, because the things you didn't like earlier, you will come back to them later. And this philosophy in my mind applies to everything: politics, life, decisions, all of it, right? Like there is, we've been sort of almost coaxed by media and what have you, to kind of lean into our competitive spirit to kind of choose. And we almost pride ourselves that, oh, look how definitive and opinionated and confident I am. Well, no, you're not, because you are
Right.
going to change with
Right. Right.
time,
Mhm.
so just get over it. So I don't know. So I think this movie has some of that going on as well. All right. So what's your number two?
So my number two film is Pitch Perfect from 2012, directed by Jason Moore, starring Anna Kendrick, Rebel Wilson, Brittany Snow, Anna Camp. The IMDb plot summary: Becca, a freshman at Barden University, is cajoled into joining the Bellas, her school's all-girls singing group, injecting some much-needed energy into their repertoire. The Bellas take on their male rivals in a campus competition. So for me, and why I put this on the list, I mean, this really captures for me my very much close to my experiences in leaving home, which was going off to college. I'm not only leaving, this is less about leaving like your parents and more about going off to a place where you, like Becca, she had no friends, she didn't know anyone, she started off in a totally new situation, and how you are able to get over your feelings of homesickness and these feelings of how to deal with leaving home through the people that you meet. And it's the friends that you meet in these new places, because you're forced to have new friends, which I was when I went off to college too, helps share and meeting people that share in your passions and helping you deal with what it's like to be this new version of yourself now that you've left home. So, like I said, I really identify with the character Becca in this film. I also, in my freshman year, first semester, joined a singing a cappella group as well,
Right.
because I, felt the need to be meeting people. I didn't know anyone at all in the state of California or in my college or in Los Angeles when I moved here. So it's that very isolated feeling where you do feel kind of very alone sometimes. Like there's many scenes where Becca's just in her room, doing her own thing, because she's kind of hesitant to kind of find her new circle, if you will. And I think that circle too, as she joins this singing group, these are different people than she would have met back where she was growing up. These are not her typical type of girl. I think they're all very different, but she comes in as kind of the outsider, which is something I definitely felt too. And that a lot of the friends I was meeting, it's like you're exposed to new people, new experiences, and that is what really helps you deal with how you are now no longer in a comfort zone. And a lot of leaving home to me is about leaving this comfort zone, going off and doing something different. She stretches herself and finds new talents. She was not necessarily a singer. She was interested in music, but she wasn't really a singer. At least the movie doesn't say she was before she joins this a cappella group. So it's like you do discover a lot of new things about yourself and new passions in terms of the people that you meet, which is definitely something I was experiencing a lot with my my new friends and new experiences, and being in a totally new place where I don't have nothing to fall back on, which she definitely didn't either. And I think it is about the friends and the people that you meet in these new areas really are things you would not have experienced when leaving home. So for me, I think that's why this movie is so important to me, not only because my path kind of mirrored a little bit of what Becca was doing, but I do think that's the people that you meet when you are in these new places really helps you not only get adjusted to that feeling of leaving home, but people that you never would have met if you didn't leave home, and how important it really is to leave home. She found lifelong friends in this Bard and Bella's singing group, and a lot of my friends that I still am really close to right now were friends that I met in college that, if I had stayed back in my hometown to go to school, I would have been hanging out with a lot of my high school friends, because a lot of them stayed in Boston, and I wouldn't have stretched myself and got out there and just met new people, which I think is a very important part of leaving home. Plus I just love this movie. As listeners, I already put another Pitch Perfect film on a previous episode. Maybe the third one will come up in a subsequent episode. But yeah, this film I watch all the time. It's one of my favorite films, and it really, every time I see it, just transports me back to those, especially those first couple months in leaving home, being off at school, and just being alone, but forcing yourself to find other people. And the music's great. I love the singing in it too. But that's why I put this on my list.
Awesome. No, I love this movie too. I think I shit on the sequel that you'd put on your previous list quite hard. But this one, I was in love with this movie from the moment I saw it. It's been on my repeat viewing. I've seen it several times, and It's funny. I actually didn't see this as like a leaving home movie until you pointed it out. But you're absolutely right. That whole first half of the movie when she's just in a room, all that resonates a lot with me too. Especially when I
Mm-hmm.
came to grad school, I literally didn't know anybody else, and
Mm.
you're I don't know. It's like this weird thing of you're uncomfortable, scared, but you're also trying to protect yourself, but you're
Exactly.
also coming back to what you know and what you're comfortable with. So you sort of are in your bubble, but that bubble is being challenged, every now and then. And that can be a pretty, tense experience. And I think the movie really captures that. And I think Anna Kendrick is so good. Everybody's great in this movie, but she
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
captures that. Like this could have been played in a way that felt, I don't know, very cookie cutter or a caricature, but I think you really see the struggle of this person. And she's not just, walking around with like a kind of a dark cloud over her head just
Mm-hmm.
for the heck of it. Like you feel why. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that is so important. Otherwise, the movie would be too silly, too saccharine. You need that sort of dark energy to balance the rest of the movie out. So yeah, I love this movie. The music is great. Once again, you're reminded when and if music is used in the right way, how powerful it can be.
Oh,
I
for sure.
tear up every single time when she sings the Breakfast Club song
Oh,
in the
yeah.
end.
Yeah, me too. That's a
Every
great
single
moment.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just so good. And all the songs and all the montages of music are used so purposefully to kind of show her growth, but also the growth of the friendship and the relationships that she's building through these different acts that are happening, how they are learning to be with each other, how they're trying to perfect the art of,
Mm-hmm.
the whole competition. So, yeah, it's just on the surface can come off as like a simple story, but I think it's done pretty deftly. So yeah, I love this movie, and some great lines all across the board. Let's be honest, is one of my favorites. I think of that often.
Yeah, yeah, but you're totally right in that this Becca character could very easily have been very two-dimensional. Like, oh, she's
Yeah,
the weird like artsy kid who then becomes
yeah,
the
and we've
singing
seen many of
girl.
those.
Exactly, but no, she stays true to who she is, but she just expands who she is. And also, in the film, she comes in not really wanting to stay in this college. She kind of wants to go transfer to focus on her music
Yeah,
producing. She's like, I'm not really going to be here, whatever. This is just kind of I want to leave to go to, I think, to New York to go to school. But at the end of the movie, she stays, and it's because of the people that she met. She realizes, no, I can stretch and be who I want to be here because of the people that I can meet. I create my own kind of world there too. But yeah, it's again, this whole franchise is very near and dear to me. But this one I think is much more about leaving home, whereas each one of these films I think touches on a different theme in the Pitch Perfect
yeah,
universe. But yeah, it's always fun to rewatch. Um,
I couldn't agree more.
Great. So now we're on to our number ones. So Karan, what is your number one film about captures the feelings of leaving home?
Yeah, get your tissues out. My number one is Brooklyn from 2015, once again starring Saoirse Ronan and Emery Cohen, Donald Gleason, a bunch of other great people. Quick logline: an Irish immigrant lands in 1950s Brooklyn, where she quickly falls into a romance with a local. When her past catches up with her, however, she must choose between two countries and the lives that exist within. So I put this movie on my list because a big part of leaving home is that feeling of homesickness. And I don't think I know of a movie in my lifetime that I've seen that captures that feeling so perfectly. And they even say it in the movie that it's almost like a disease that it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember feeling that,
Mm.
at every point of my life when I left home. So to give people context, I was living in Delhi and I would go to undergrad in a city called Pune, which is close to Bombay or Mumbai. It was almost a 2-day long train journey. And throughout that
Oh, wow.
entire train journey, I would basically sleep all but maybe an hour because I was
Mm.
just so overcome with emotion and almost paralyzed, if you will, that I just
Mm.
couldn't do anything. I was so upset and just unhappy to leave home that I would
Mm.
just coil up and just sleep. And then of course wake up with a giant headache that would last for another day. So
Mhm.
a pretty painful,
Yeah,
dramatic
sounds like it.
experience leaving home. And then, of course, since then things changed and I finally grew up. But even now, I'm 40. When I go back to Delhi for like a 10-day trip, when I say goodbye, that scene at the airport and the first few hours of the flight, I'm once again the 17-year-old boy
Mm,
leaving home. It doesn't take me much to kind of fall back into that place. And I think this movie really captures that, and really it's Saoirse, like her face, and it's all in the face, it's all in her eyes. Like
hmm
this feeling of that, yeah, you're meeting people, you're going about the day, but you're a zombie in this new place, trying to figure out who you are. But it's not
Right,
even about the newness of the place, it's really about the weight of not being with the people that you grew up with.
right,
And that feeling of family and familiarity, like that's stripped out. Like she's a very competent, smart, bright young woman who has ambitions and has goals and is actually getting along pretty well, but it's this other stuff that sort of pulls you down. And then how I think the movie does a great job in showing how important it is to meet those souls in those early years who give you a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of a nudge, make you feel seen, and they go such a long way. And I'm sure everybody has had those. I've certainly had those people, and you see many of those people in this movie who just do a little, and that goes such a long way for her to sort of find her home, find herself. So yeah, I just think it's a brilliant movie in that regard. The romance that she encounters is also one of the sweetest
hmm
romances I've seen on film. Like whenever I watch it, I'm smiling ear to ear, just looking at those two. The way he looks at her, how shy he is, but also forthcoming. She has a bit of an upper hand, and she sort of, keeps him at arm's length, but also is sort of melting for him a little bit. It's just so beautiful. And then the last thing I would say is I also relate very strongly to the part when she goes back home and the life that you've left behind and the life that you sort of felt you didn't really have much going on. And suddenly you're back home and things feel kind of good.
uh-huh,
People are looking up to you. There's more opportunity. There's suddenly more doors opening. And for a brief moment, you almost even second guess that maybe I should come back here. And then, of course, boom, something reminds you of all the things that you didn't like about this place.
yep,
And you're like, no, hell no. Like, and similar to Ladybird, like, you don't have to, you know, you can still not like it but still love it.
right,
Like she'll always be Irish, she'll always
hmm
be Ailish, and she has all this stuff from home inside of her, but it doesn't mean you have to stay. and
right.
and I think I relate to that. And yeah, it's corny. You come back and the girl is waiting for the guy who's leaving for work. It's movie magic, whatever you say it, but it works. Like this movie I don't think will work for people who are a little bit cynical. I think you have to kind of come with a little bit of a sentimentality
hmm
and corniness in life, which I have. So this movie works for me. Transportive, attention to detail, all that is brilliant. Those and initial scenes of her being on the boat and coming through immigration, all of that, brilliant. Like I remember that I didn't take a boat to Ellis Island, but
uh-huh.
my first flight into the US and walking through immigration with my giant folder of papers, I'm like, what if they send me back? What if they like lock me up somewhere because I've
Yeah.
answered the questions in a wrong way? uh all of it. So that's why this is my number one movie. It's also a comfort movie, weirdly enough, for me, because
Mm.
when I feel homesick or I want to put myself deliberately in that feeling of catching that disease again,
hmm
this is the movie to put on. So yeah, that's Brooklyn.
Yeah, so I'm really glad you put this film on the list. I'd never seen this movie before, but it's been on my
Hmm.
like, oh, I should watch it because when it came out, so many people said that I should see it. It just I don't remember what year. It was something I was busy and I couldn't see it in theaters, and then never have seen it. But I really like this movie a lot. I think as someone who is not an immigrant and didn't go through those same experiences, and actually as someone who I don't know if I've ever actually really felt homesickness before, which is maybe weird to say, but I don't think I've ever felt those type of emotions. It really like made me feel, I felt them though for her. Both, I think it was one of the best movies I've ever seen about what I assume the immigrant experience feels like, in terms of how you are away from, you're off in this other world. You feel at a place everywhere, but then you slowly do, find your new home. And what the message of this movie that really, especially the end, like really hit me too, is like it really is about when you do leave home, you're creating a new home, but this new home is really like, they say home is where the heart is. I mean, it's like once she fell in love with this guy who I didn't remember his name now, but when Tony, yeah, it was the love for Tony that then she felt home. She was surrounded by love. She was with somebody that she loved, and then that is now Brooklyn is becoming home to her because of that. And the reason why she then goes back in the film and decides to go back to Brooklyn is, yeah, she went back to Ireland. You're right. A lot of things that are great there. She realizes the bad things about being in a small town, the gossip, all that kind of stuff. But it's really the love for Tony that brings her back. And that line at the end of the film too, she's on the boat going back, and there's another new Irish immigrant that she's talking to, trying to like reassure her that everything's going to kind of be okay. And the woman asks her, "Oh, what's Brooklyn, or what's Brooklyn like? Because that's where I'm headed." And she's like, "Oh, Brooklyn's like Ireland. It's like home." And I think that's when she really realizes herself that her home is in Brooklyn, because now she has this new life and this new love with Tony. That's sort of how I read it's the romance and the finding somebody, and how important it is to find the people that you love in where you go, because then that is how it becomes your new home. Now Ireland is still obviously where she's from, and like you said, she's still Irish. She's proud of that. It's not like she's running away from that, but I think she's building a new life and a new home, and it's through love that she's able to find that. So that's what this movie kind of how it resonated with me. I think the love story is like you said, just so great. And all the different emotions that she takes, the twists and turns of what it must be like to leave your home country. Homesick. Okay, this is fun. Oh, actually, I want to be home. Oh, this is kind of nice being home. Oh, wait a second. No, all those mixed emotions, I'm sure, as you said, you were feeling too. And I just think this movie does such an incredible job of capturing it. Just such a well done story. And the acting is just phenomenal at every level. And yeah, just really, really touching, and definitely I loved it. I really enjoyed the film.
Glad to hear that. I will say though, yeah, the love is a big part of it, but I think it's not just the only thing. I think it is also about the life that she's built and the independence that she's been able to afford in this new place, where she's going to school, she has these friends, she lives by herself. I think it's all of it, because I think what gets challenged, because she has like love and admiration back home too in Domhnall Gleeson's character, but
sure,
what gets really poked at is, I think, that feeling of independence, the gossipiness and the small townness really is, I think, a metaphor to accentuate that feeling that, oh, I can't really be myself. I can't be my own person here. And that's sort of what, not to that degree, but for different reasons, I felt that too, because I wasn't finding the kind of people that, and you're right, it is about the people, but I think the underlying reason to me is about feeling you and feeling independent. I think she did want that, and her sister was smart because she saw that in her. That's why she sent her off, that you, because not everybody wants that in their life, and there's no judgment there,
no, not at all.
And but I think she did want that, and that's why she came to this whole journey. So yeah, I think love is a part of it, but I have a feeling that even if the Tony romance had not gotten to a place where it does in the movie, and had they not even been engaged, which they are before she leaves.
They're married, actually. Yeah, they get full.
They're married. Sorry, yeah, right. Yeah, I think she would have still come back, if not that week or the week after, the month after, she would have come back. I think, because she would have, that life would have felt, sufficient, but maybe not what she wants. That's just my feeling.
Yeah, no, I can see that. It's like there was already a life kind of laid out in front of her back in Ireland, and in that she didn't have as much agency in, I guess. Like people were setting her up. Like she was given this job. She was kind of given, Donald Gleason as well.
Right.
And she didn't have that control. Whereas in Brooklyn, like she kind of set her own destiny one way or the other. And that was, she wanted to be with Tony. It wasn't anyone said, oh, be with this Italian kid, or, oh, you're kind of being set up. It's like, hey, that was something she went after.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think that's a lot of it too. It's like you leaving home to kind of escape expectations, I guess, in a way that other people might have of you,
and have agency.
And have agency. Yeah. No, it's just a fantastic film. I'm very glad. I'm very glad I watched it finally. It's just been held up to the all the recommendations I heard, and how great the film was. It definitely met those expectations for sure.
I'm glad to hear that. And also, like, look at Saoirse Ronan, like Ladybird and Eilish couldn't be two more different people. And this is the same actress playing them. It's incredible.
Yeah, no, she just gives she's again, like you said earlier, like one of the better young actresses we have working today. And I've been, following her career since that Joe Wright film, blanking on the name. Atonement. Right. Yeah. Well, she was so good in that. And yeah, she just continued to put great performance after great performance. But I especially was taken with how she did this role. Like you said, it's a lot of it just in her eyes and how she's looking. It's the subtleties that come across. There's not, yes, the script plays a big part of it, but it's a lot through her performance. You really feel what it's like for her to be in New York, just so far away from Ireland. She's just fantastic performance. Oscar nominated, I think. Yeah,
Oscar nominated, and I think a very deserving Best Picture nomination too. Because
I agree.
It's all departments working in concert. This movie can just be a very small performance movie, and it'll still be very good. But it has a lot of scale and scope to it, and you need that for someone to sort of for you to really see that fish out of water feeling. It sort of accentuates like all these amazing Brooklyn shots, across the board. Like, and then even Ireland, it's so beautiful.
Oh,
like,
man,
I really want to go someday. It's just stunningly beautiful. And I think that's important to kind of have this dilemma heightened, that because, if you're going back to a place which had nothing to offer and kind of was this, ugly place, pardon me for saying that, maybe the choice would be different versus here. You're coming back to that something that looks heavenly, really. So I think it's pretty important. So yeah, I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, fantastic. Highly recommend folks watch this film if you haven't already seen it. Just a great, or rewatch it because it's that good of a film. Do a rewatch.
Yeah. All right, what's your number one?
So my number one film is Zootopia from 2016. So this is directed by Byron Howard, Rich Moore, and Jared Bush. It's an animated film, so starring the voices of Jennifer Goodwin, Jason Bateman, Idris Elba, amongst others. The IMDb plot summary: in a city of anthropomorphic, I said it right, animals, a rookie bunny cop and a cynical con artist fox must work together to uncover a conspiracy. So this movie, to me, and the reason why I put it on the list and put it as my number one, was really captures to me the reasons why I wanted to leave home in the first place and made the choice to go off to school in a totally different state, totally different city. And it's that for kind of two reasons. It's similar to the main character, Judy Hobbs. And the first one is just that you feel that what you want to do, like your dreams and your path, you cannot find in your current city. So she's from this small town called Bunnyborough. She's a rabbit, and her path in Bunnyborough is be a farmer on the carrot farm, just like her parents and all of her hundreds of brothers and sisters, because rabbits reproduce a lot. And that's just her path. But she wants to be a police officer, which is something that in Bunnyborough, at least, is frowned upon. Oh, a bunny can't be a police officer. And, you have to go off to the big city to do that. And that's one of the reasons why she goes off to the city. And, for me and my point in my life at that point, I wanted to pursue, the entertainment industry and the film industry. And I definitely in Boston was not the right place for that. So because of my desires and the path that I wanted to take, I had to then leave home. It was part of it. And if I grew up in LA, maybe I probably would have still stayed in LA and not actually left home in the first place. But that was one of the reasons why I left. And the other thing that I think this movie does a great job in capturing, and again, a thing that I felt too in terms of why I wanted to leave home, was just to try new things, to just go off and do something different, because each of those experiences and different experiences would just make you into a more well-rounded person, or you might discover things about yourself or about the world that you didn't already know. There's her definitely a very energetic and optimistic attitude throughout the entire film of just, yeah, I'll try this, I'll not let anything get in my way, was definitely how I approached when I left home and came to LA. Yes, obviously I wasn't leaving Bunny Borough or some small town, and Boston's still a city with a lot of things there, but LA is a sprawling metropolis in comparison. And I definitely wasn't ever kind of intimidated by that. I was more excited by the opportunities of all these, new people, new things, something different. Again, I'd only been to LA one time before. I didn't really know what the lifestyle was going to be like here, but I wanted to experience it and try something different. And that montage in the beginning of this film, when she leaves Bunny Borough on the train, it's like a 2-minute sequence to a Shakira song, which is one of the highlight of the film for me, and actually one of my favorite animated sequences in an animated film. Just beautifully animated, but this whole feeling of like, the lyrics of the song about, I want to, try everything. I'll do anything I want. Even if I fail, it's fine, because it's just something new that I did. That was the reason why I left home, to do those things and be okay to fail. Sometimes you're home, there's expectations again from parents or just your friends back home, or just your normal surroundings, where there are kind of, it's harder to maybe fail because people expect certain things from you. You go to a new place, you don't experience that at all. You can kind of do whatever you want. Similar to what we were just talking about in Brooklyn too. Like, she went off to Brooklyn to do things she probably never would have dreamed of being able to do in her small town in Ireland, because there were those expectations of the people around her and what the small town was offering. And again, that's one of the big reasons why I left in the first place, to try something new, and I still believe in that. It's just like, try anything, try everything, like the song says. And that song is something I listen to all the time to kind of motivate me to do new things in my life. And it, whether it's moving to new places or just experiencing new things or doing new things or trying new things, it's definitely an anthem of mine that I've taken with me after seeing this film for the first time. And it really wasn't until I saw this movie, actually, I realized, like, oh yeah, that actually was like something I never really thought too much about, but that was a major reason why I wanted to try something new. And in college is a great opportunity to do that, because it is only temporary. If I had hated it, I always could have moved back home at some point. I ended up not doing that because I loved it. But it was an opportunity, and I wanted to take advantage of that try everything opportunity. So I think this movie and the message of that, in terms of the positive things about leaving home and the reasons why I did it, were just brilliantly captured in that song and that sequence, and just the film overall and the attitude that it has, especially that Judy Hopps, the main character Rabbit, has in the film. So, and the movie's brilliant too. I think there's a lot of other things going on too about knowing yourself and prejudices and passing judgment on other people. That there's a lot of other things going on here, but to me, the message that resonates the most is this about just, hey, try everything. You'll fail, it's fine. Everyone fails. Like, go out there and do something different in the world. So for me, that was leaving home.
Spot on with all that. She's amazing. What a great character. I watched this movie when it came out, and I remember really loving it, laughing hard with it as well. Really funny, entertaining, all of it. And I hadn't seen it since, so I was kind of excited to go back and watch it. I have to say though that the central thread that you talked about, that of course comes across beautifully. Especially the first half of the movie, but maybe it was the mood that I was in or what have you. It didn't land on me the way it did the first time around. After, like, once she was in the new place and kind of getting along with stuff and the whole thing with the fox and all, I was like, okay, this is fine. This is fine. It's sort of, maybe it, like I said, I was in a different mood, or maybe the movie doesn't have that kind of repeat value, perhaps. And I'm definitely going to give it another try, in a couple of years, just to see it, because I really loved it the first time I watched it, and I maybe came in with like very high expectations,
The second time
to see that, oh yeah, it'll probably be even better, or at least live up. And I feel that way a lot about Disney classic movies, and that's why they've endured the test of time over generations. And
right.
I don't know. Maybe I was expecting something too high, or maybe this is just not what the new Disney crop of films are about. They're very sort of point in time, or maybe I have outgrown some of that. Who knows? So that was my experience this time. That
Interesting.
all the plot machinations and the sloth and all the stuff that I really enjoyed the first time, I didn't this
Oh, you
time.
didn't laugh at the sloths,
But
huh?
I know. I was like, I know this,
Oh,
I know this. So let's just move on. The animation also sort of felt very, CGI. I sort of find myself appreciating more of the hand-drawn animation. It didn't sort of feel as real as some of the other stuff. That said, the central core of her leaving, interaction with the parents, and her sort of, you know, I'll try anything. Theater kid energy.
theater kid.
Amazing,
Yeah. That's a good description of it. Yeah.
Yeah, she's great. What a great cheerleader. And all of that really, really holds up and rings true. So I was happy to kind of get back into those bunny rabbit shoes.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I'm curious if when you watch it again in a couple years, if your opinion shifts again. I still think I've watched this movie quite often and feel that of the last 20 years, Disney animation, like putting Pixar aside, I think might be the strongest thing they've put out as an animation studio.
Probably.
I mean, maybe that's to say about the quality of the rest of the stuff they've done, but I still think this movie's a classic. Even though I was resistant to it, I only watched it because everyone told me to watch it. Like
Me too.
Looks dumb, like the trailer. I'm like, I know what this is. I don't want to watch this. So maybe I had low expectations coming in, and that's why I was so surprised by it. But no, it still resonates me to this day. But cool. So any other films?
Yeah, I had a few. So speaking of animation, Kiki's Delivery Service, which is a Miyazaki movie, Boyhood movie that we discussed in the past, Almost Famous, and Bratz Status. How about you?
Yeah, for me, it was actually 3 films we already discussed on the podcast. So I did not bring them up. Was Good Will Hunting, The Graduate, and Ghost World were the 3 that if we hadn't already talked about them, one of or maybe all of those films would have made it in.
That's a good list as well. Any closing thoughts on just leaving home?
I just thought this was a really fun topic. Definitely was fun to go back to those moments and those feelings actually that I had when leaving for college, and obviously all those decisions I made to leave home really led me to where I am now. So it's a fond memories to think back on, even though there were hard decisions, like I was talking about with the American Graffiti topic. Like I was sort of 2 minds at one point about whether I really wanted to do it, but I'm definitely glad I did. I definitely wouldn't be here talking to you on this podcast if I had stayed back in Boston for sure. So that at least is a reason why I'm happy. And it's interesting too to hear from you and to see some of these films, and especially the Brooklyn one, really to hear. To kind of feel what it was like to leave your home country and all those feelings of homesickness and things that I have not felt yet in my life, which is fun to experience those and kind of get in your shoes a little bit. So that was it was a great episode. What about you? Any kind of closing thoughts?
Yeah. Pretty much the same. I feel like I live with these feelings of leaving home with me even till this date. Maybe not as actively, so they're always there somewhere, lurking. So it's not something that I had to kind of really tap into the feeling of it. That said, the analytical side of it, of the decisions and the why, all of that stuff I had not thought about in a while, So I think it was fun to kind of revisit that and the choices one made and how it shaped me, my life, my relationships. That stuff was really good to think about, through these movies. Yeah, well, that's our episode. I hope you all enjoyed listening to this and thinking about your journeys. If you've left home or thinking of leaving home anytime soon, we'll certainly be here and see you next time. So please rate, subscribe, like us, or drop in a review wherever you listen to podcasts. So until next time, bye.
Bye.